He found his dying neighbor's abandoned mail-order bride freezing in the snow. What happened next shocked him. The winter that year had been harsher than anyone in the small town could remember. Snow lay thick on the ground, blanketing rooftops and trees, turning every familiar path into a white maze. John, a man in his late 40s who had lived in the town all his life, was walking to check his mailbox that morning. The cold air stung his cheeks, and each breath formed small clouds that disappeared into the quiet stillness around him. Most days, the snow made everything feel peaceful, almost magical. But that morning, something felt wrong. As John approached his neighbor's property, he noticed something unusual. Near the edge of the yard, partially hidden behind a pile of snow-covered branches, was a small figure curled up on the ground. At first, he thought it was just a stray dog or some debris blown by the wind. But then he saw movement, a slight shiver, and his heart tightened. He ran the last few steps and stopped abruptly. A young woman lay on the snow, her thin coat barely protecting her from the biting cold. Her hair, dark and wet with melting snow, clung to her pale face. Her small hands were tucked under her body as if she were trying to keep some warmth from escaping. Her lips were blue, and her eyes fluttered weakly as she struggled to keep consciousness. John's first thought was that she might freeze to death if he didn't act fast. "Hey! Can you hear me?" John shouted, kneeling beside her and brushing the snow from her coat. The woman stirred slightly but could barely open her eyes. When she finally looked up at him, John could see the fear reflected there. She didn't speak at first, only shivering and trying to curl tighter. Her lips moved slightly, forming a sound that John couldn't understand. Without wasting another second, John scooped her up carefully, wrapping his own scarf around her and supporting her as he carried her toward his house. Every step was a struggle. The snow made the path slippery, and the woman's body felt frail in his arms. But he didn't stop. As he reached his front porch, he placed her gently on a chair by the door and immediately ran to get blankets and a warm coat. Once she was wrapped in multiple layers and sitting by the fireplace, her shivering slowed, though she still trembled from the cold. John sat across from her, silently observing her for a moment. He could see she was young, probably in her early 20s, and she had an air of confusion mixed with fear. Her eyes darted around the room as if she expected someone, or something, to appear. Finally, she whispered something that made John lean closer. It was a man's name, spoken so faintly he almost missed it. "Michael," she said. The tone of her voice wasn't just soft, it was filled with worry, desperation, and something else that John couldn't immediately place. He realized she must have been expecting this man to come for her, but he hadn't. John poured her a cup of hot tea, careful not to spill. He handed it to her, and she took it with shaking hands. As the warm liquid touched her lips, she let out a small sigh, one that seemed to release a little of the tension holding her body rigid. She sipped slowly, her eyes never leaving John's face. There was a story behind those eyes, one that she clearly needed to tell, but she wasn't ready yet. After a few minutes, when the tea had warmed her slightly, John gently asked, "Are you okay? What happened out there?" The woman hesitated. Her voice was barely audible, trembling like a fragile leaf. I don't know where to start," she whispered. My husband, he's sick. He left me." Her words came in broken phrases, as though speaking too much at once would make her collapse. John realized this was someone who had been completely alone, abandoned in the cold, with no one to help her. John sat back, letting her collect herself. He could feel a mix of anger and sorrow rising within him. How could anyone leave a person like this, out in the snow, freezing and helpless? He had lived in this town long enough to know that people could be cruel, but seeing it firsthand was different. He wanted to comfort her, to promise her that she was safe, even if he didn't yet know the full story. After a long pause, she finally began to speak in more complete sentences. Her name was Anna. She had come from another country, full of hope and excitement, expecting to start a new life with her husband. He had seemed kind at first, but soon after her arrival, he became distant and then sick. He was bedridden, she explained, and left her alone to manage everything herself. When she tried to ask for help, he dismissed her. One night, she was left outside in the snow while he refused to let her inside. That was when John found her. As Anna spoke, John listened silently. Her story painted a picture of fear, confusion, and loneliness. She hadn't known what to do or where to turn. No friends, no family nearby, and no way to contact anyone in her home country. Every word she said made John's heart ache. He realized she had not only been abandoned, but also left in a position where survival itself was a daily challenge. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and John made sure the fire was strong enough to keep her warm. He moved closer to her, offering blankets and hot tea again. Slowly, the color returned to her cheeks, and her shivering decreased. But her eyes remained wary, scanning the room as though expecting danger at any moment. I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "No money, no documents, nothing. I don't know what will happen to me." Her words hung in the room, heavy and full of despair. John felt a strong sense of responsibility. She was helpless, alone, and in need of immediate care. John thought about his own life, his routine, his quiet days, and his small but steady existence. Helping Anna meant disrupting all of that. But more than that, it meant doing the right thing. He couldn't just leave her to face the harsh winter alone, not after finding her like that. And even if he didn't know the full circumstances, he could feel that she needed someone she could trust. He gently placed a hand on hers. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "I'll help you. We'll figure this out together." Anna's eyes welled up with tears, the first real expression of relief crossing her face since John had found her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel completely alone. The room grew quiet except for the crackling of the fire. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. But inside, a small sense of safety began to form. John knew there would be challenges ahead. Finding help for Anna, dealing with her husband, and navigating the legal and practical difficulties of her situation. But for now, the immediate danger was over. She was warm, she was safe, and she had someone who cared. As night fell, John checked the locks on his doors and brought another blanket to Anna. She had finally curled up, exhausted but comforted by the warmth of the fire and the safety of his home. He watched her for a moment, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had acted without hesitation, following a moral instinct he couldn't ignore. Before leaving the room, he asked gently, "Do you want to tell me everything about what happened tomorrow? For now, just rest." "You're safe." Anna nodded weakly, a small, grateful smile touching her lips. John realized that sometimes survival depended not just on strength, but on the kindness of strangers. He turned off the lights, leaving only the fire to glow softly, and stepped out onto the snowy porch. The world outside was silent and still, but inside, hope had begun to grow. John didn't know what the future held for Anna or how complicated her situation might be. But he knew one thing for certain. He had made a choice to help, and that choice had already changed her life. For the first time since he had found her, John felt a glimmer of anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. And as he watched the snow fall gently on the town, he couldn't help but think that sometimes the coldest winter nights could also bring the warmest moments of humanity. Morning came slowly, the sunlight faintly filtering through the heavy curtains of John's living room. Anna was still asleep, her face calm for the first time in days. The warmth of the fire and the thick blankets had given her some rest, but John knew that sleep alone couldn't erase the fear and exhaustion that had been building for her. He sat quietly in a chair nearby, sipping a cup of coffee, his mind racing with questions. How had someone so young and vulnerable ended up alone in the snow? How could he help her safely without making her situation worse? After a while, Anna stirred and opened her eyes. She looked around the room, taking in the familiar surroundings of John's modest home, and for a moment her expression was one of cautious relief. She took a deep breath and sat up slowly, rubbing her hands together to warm them. The fire cast soft shadows on the walls, and the room smelled faintly of wood smoke and fresh coffee. It was a simple, comforting environment, something she hadn't had for days. John offered her another cup of tea and she took it gratefully, blowing on the warm liquid before sipping. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice still weak but steadier than the night before. I don't even know your name." "I'm John," he replied. "You're safe here, Anna. Take your time. When you're ready, you can tell me everything." For a moment, Anna simply stared into her cup, gathering her thoughts. She hadn't been able to explain the full story the night before. The shock, fear, and cold had left her barely able to speak. Now, with the fire warming her and John sitting patiently across from her, she felt a small courage building inside. I came here from another country," she began hesitantly. "I thought I was going to start a new life. I met someone, and he promised he would take care of me. I trusted him completely, but after I arrived, everything changed. He became sick and bedridden very quickly. I tried to help him, but he didn't want me around. He told me to leave, and then he just abandoned me." John listened carefully, his heart tightening with every word. The way she described it was simple, but the emotions behind her words were clear: fear, loneliness, and confusion. He could tell she hadn't just been left alone, she had been completely unsupported with no one to turn to. "I don't have any family here," Anna continued, "and I don't even know anyone in this town. When I tried to get help, no one would listen. I didn't know what to do. And then I ended up outside in the snow." Her voice broke slightly and she paused, swallowing hard. John could see the pain in her eyes, the kind that comes from feeling completely helpless. "You did the right thing by coming here," John said gently. "You're not alone anymore. I'll help you figure this out." Anna's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. She had been alone for so long, scared of every step she took, unsure of who she could trust. John's calm presence and willingness to help felt like a lifeline. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. I don't know what will happen to me now," she admitted. "I have no money, no documents, nothing. I don't even know if I can go back home. And I can't stay there with him, not like this. I'm trapped." John thought carefully. Her situation was complicated. She couldn't go back home easily, and staying with her husband wasn't safe. She was vulnerable in every sense, and the harsh winter only made it worse. But he also knew that he had to act quickly and thoughtfully. One wrong step could make things worse for her. "Listen," he said, leaning forward. "We'll figure this out together. For now, you need to stay warm and safe. I'll take care of you while we figure out the next steps. No one will hurt you here." Anna's shoulders relaxed slightly at his words. She had expected to be judged, ignored, or sent away. But John's calm, steady assurance gave her hope. She realized that for the first time in days, she felt safe. She could breathe without fear, if only for a little while. After a few moments of quiet, John asked gently, "Can you tell me more about what happened with your husband? I need to understand so we can help you properly." Anna nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking again. He got sick very suddenly. I thought I was supposed to care for him, but he didn't want me there. He said he didn't need help, and then, I don't know, I think he wanted to be left alone. One night, he wouldn't let me inside. I tried to talk to him to ask for help, but he didn't care. I didn't know what to do, and then I ended up outside in the snow. John listened silently, absorbing every word. The story was heartbreaking, but he noticed something else too: Anna's resilience. Despite everything, she had survived the night alone in the snow, something most people would not have been able to do. She was scared, yes, but she was also determined to live. That strength hidden beneath fear made John feel certain that they could get through the challenges ahead. "We'll get through this," John said firmly. "But first, We need to make sure you're safe, and then we can figure out how to get help." Anna nodded, her lips trembling slightly. She didn't say much more, but her eyes conveyed gratitude and relief. John could see that she had begun to trust him, and that trust was crucial. It meant that she would follow his guidance, which would help keep her safe. Over the next few hours, John helped Anna get cleaned up, gave her warm clothes, and made her a proper meal. She ate slowly, clearly still weak from the night in the cold. As she ate, John asked questions quietly, trying not to overwhelm her. Where was she from? Did she have family she could contact? What documents did she have? Each answer was carefully noted in his mind, helping him plan the next steps. Anna revealed that she had very little in terms of documents, just a passport which she had kept on her. She had no money, no friends in the town, and no way to contact her family easily. Her husband had controlled most of her communications, leaving her isolated. John realized that the situation was serious. If she stayed where she was, she could be at risk again. She needed protection, guidance, and support. By the afternoon, the snow outside had eased slightly, but the cold remained. John suggested that Anna rest again while he called a trusted friend who might be able to help with legal and practical matters. Anna agreed, curling up on the sofa with a blanket. As she drifted off to sleep, John felt a mixture of relief and determination. He was relieved she was safe for now, but he knew that the bigger challenges were still ahead. As he watched her sleep, John reflected on the chain of events that had led to this moment. A stranger's courage, a single act of kindness, and quick thinking had saved Anna from a dangerous night in the snow. But he also realized that compassion alone wouldn't solve all the problems. They would need to navigate complex legal issues, communicate with authorities, and ensure that she could remain safe without being sent back into danger. Still, John felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in a long time. Helping Anna wasn't just about doing the right thing. It was about making a difference in someone's life when it truly mattered. He promised himself silently that he wouldn't let her down. No matter how difficult the journey ahead, he would stay by her side. Evening came, and Anna woke briefly to sip another cup of tea. She looked at John and gave a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." "You don't have to thank me," John replied. "Just rest. Tomorrow, we start figuring out the next steps together." As night fell, John once again checked the locks on the doors and made sure the fire was strong enough to keep the room warm. Outside, the wind howled softly, rattling the windows, but inside, there was a sense of calm, safety, and hope. Anna, for the first time in what felt like forever, was able to sleep peacefully, even if only for a few hours. John sat quietly in the living room, thinking about the coming days. He knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, and Anna's situation was complicated. But he also knew that for the first time, she had someone she could trust. And in a world that had left her abandoned and alone, that trust could make all the difference. The fire crackled and the room was warm. Outside, snow continued to cover the world in white, but inside, hope had begun to grow. And John knew that sometimes, courage and kindness could change a life in ways nothing else could. The next morning, the cold still pressed against the windows, and the world outside seemed covered in an endless white blanket. John sat at the kitchen table, staring at his cup of coffee, thinking about the situation in front of him. Anna was resting upstairs, finally gaining some strength after the terrifying night in the snow. But John knew that this was only the beginning. Her story was complicated, her husband was still sick, and the town was unaware of what had happened. He had to make decisions carefully. John had never been a man to rush into things without thinking. He had always believed in doing what was right, but he also knew that life sometimes demanded careful planning. He considered his options. One path was to contact the authorities immediately, explain the situation, and let them take over. It was the safe and official route. But he hesitated. What if Anna was sent back to a dangerous situation? What if the authorities didn't fully understand her vulnerability and instead treated her like a troublemaker or an outsider? John sighed, pressing his fingers against his temples. The moral dilemma weighed heavily on him. He wanted to follow the rules, but he also knew that rules sometimes failed to protect the most vulnerable. Anna was young, alone, and completely dependent on him for now. He couldn't risk her safety. And yet, sheltering her privately could bring trouble if someone discovered her presence. It was a delicate balance, and John felt the full weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Upstairs, Anna slowly opened her eyes and looked around. She had slept better than the previous night, but exhaustion still clung to her. When she saw John sitting at the table, she offered a small, hesitant smile. "Good morning," she whispered. Her voice was still soft, but there was a slight strength returning to it. "Morning," John replied, trying to smile back. "You slept well," Anna nodded, sitting up slowly and stretching her arms. "Better than I have in days," she admitted. "I feel safer here." John felt a small surge of relief. That was what mattered most for now, keeping her safe. But he also knew that feeling safe didn't solve her larger problems. She still had no money, no way to contact her family easily, and no support system. The question that troubled him most was simple yet heavy. What would happen next? After breakfast, they sat together quietly, each lost in their thoughts. John decided to speak first. "Anna, we need to think about the next steps. You can't stay like this forever. We have to find a way to make sure you are safe long-term. And we need to deal with your husband's situation too. He's sick and someone should be caring for him." Anna nodded slowly, her eyes filled with worry. "I don't know what to do. I can't go back to him, and I don't know if anyone here will help me. I feel trapped." John reached out and placed a reassuring hand on hers. "We'll figure it out. You're not trapped anymore, but we need a plan. I have a friend who knows about legal matters and helping people in difficult situations. We can contact them, and they can advise us on the safest steps to take." Anna's expression shifted slightly. She was still anxious, but a small flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. For the first time, she realized that she didn't have to face this alone. There was someone willing to help her, to protect her. The morning passed slowly, with John preparing Anna for the possibility of facing difficult decisions. He explained that they might need to interact with authorities or lawyers, and that it could be uncomfortable. But he emphasized that everything would be done carefully, with her safety as the top priority. Anna listened intently, absorbing every word. She realized that she could trust John to guide her through this unfamiliar world. By mid-afternoon, John finally made the call to his trusted friend, David, who had experience helping people navigate legal and practical challenges. David agreed to meet them discreetly and offered advice on protecting Anna while making sure that no one endangered her. John felt a sense of relief. There was a plan forming, however fragile it might be, and it was rooted in safety and legality. While they waited for David, John and Anna talked quietly about her life, her dreams, and what had led her to this town. Anna spoke cautiously, still wary of sharing too much too quickly. But as she spoke, John could see the resilience beneath her fear. She had survived the cold, the abandonment, and the loneliness, and now she was slowly regaining her strength. "You know," John said gently, "you're stronger than you realize. Surviving last night, it wasn't easy. Most people wouldn't have made it, but you did." Anna smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment coloring her expression. "I didn't feel strong at the time. I just wanted to live," she admitted. "And then you found me," John nodded. "Sometimes survival is about more than just strength. It's about courage and the choices we make. And you made it this far, that's courage too." The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. John quickly went to open it, revealing David standing there with a serious but kind expression. After greetings, they all sat down, and John explained Anna's situation carefully, making sure she felt included in the discussion. David listened attentively, asking questions to clarify details about her documents, her husband's health, and her current circumstances. After considering all the information, David gave careful advice. He suggested steps to ensure Anna's safety while addressing the legal and practical aspects of her situation. This included temporary shelter arrangements, communication with authorities if necessary, and methods for protecting her documents and identity. John listened closely, grateful for the guidance. Anna felt a mix of relief and apprehension. On one hand, she was glad there was a plan. On the other, she realized that the path forward would require courage and cooperation. But for the first time since she had arrived in the snow, she felt like she had allies. She wasn't completely alone. As the afternoon turned to evening, John prepared a simple dinner for Anna and David. They ate quietly, discussing practical details while also sharing lighter stories to ease the tension. Anna felt more at ease than she had in days. She realized that she was starting to regain a sense of control over her life, something she hadn't felt since leaving her home country. After dinner, John and David discussed the next steps in private. They planned how to contact the local authorities if needed, how to secure Anna's temporary shelter, and how to ensure her husband received the care he required without putting Anna in danger. The plan was careful, deliberate, and focused on safety above all else. Meanwhile, Anna prepared for bed, feeling exhausted but safer than she had in days. John checked in on her before leaving, making sure the fire was strong and that she had everything she needed. "Sleep well," he said. "Tomorrow, we take the next steps together." "You're safe here, Anna," she smiled faintly, feeling a small sense of comfort. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." John nodded quietly. He knew that the real challenges were just beginning. Protecting Anna, navigating legal and practical hurdles, and managing the moral responsibility he felt were all tasks that would test him. But he also knew that he couldn't ignore the need in front of him. He had made a choice, and he would see it through. That night, as Anna drifted into sleep, John sat by the fire, thinking about the difficult path ahead. The moral dilemma weighed heavily on him, but so did the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had acted when it mattered most. Sometimes doing the right thing was complicated, but it was always worth it. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft and unrelenting, covering the world in white. But inside John's home, there was warmth, safety, and the first glimmers of hope. Anna's trust, the careful planning with David, and John's unwavering determination had begun to change the course of events. And John knew, as he stared into the fire, that the hardest choices often required courage, patience, and a steadfast commitment to do what was right, even when the path was uncertain. The next morning, the snow had stopped falling, leaving the town covered in a soft white blanket. The sun shone weakly through the clouds, reflecting off the rooftops and making the world look calm and peaceful. But inside John's house, the calm was only surface level. There was a lot to do. Anna needed protection, her husband needed care, and the legal and practical issues were waiting. John could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but he also felt determined. Today was the day to start putting their plans into action. Anna woke early, moving carefully as she descended the stairs. She had slept better than the previous nights, but she still moved with caution, aware of her weak state. John greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Anna. How are you feeling?" "Better," she replied softly. "Stronger at least. Thank you for everything you've done. I don't know how I can ever repay you." John smiled gently. "You don't need to worry about that. Right now, your safety is the most important thing. That's what matters." After breakfast, they prepared for the first part of their plan. John had spoken to his friend David the night before, and they had agreed on steps to keep Anna safe while also addressing her husband's health. David had promised to guide them through legal matters and to help them find temporary shelter arrangements for Anna if needed. John felt reassured. Having someone experienced in these situations gave him confidence that they could handle this without causing harm or creating trouble. First, they needed to check on Anna's husband. John and Anna approached his neighbor's house cautiously. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. John knocked lightly at the door, and after a moment it creaked open. The neighbor was weak and bedridden, just as Anna had described. He looked pale, frail, and unable to care for himself. Anna stepped forward cautiously. Are you okay?" she asked softly. The man weakly shook his head. I can't, I'm sorry," he mumbled. His voice was frail, but it carried a hint of guilt. He didn't have the strength to fully express it, but John could see that even he realized the situation had gone too far. John quickly assessed the scene. The neighbor was alive, but he clearly needed medical attention and care. At the same time, Anna had to be protected from being left alone again. John spoke gently to the neighbor, explaining that help was coming and that he needed to rest and accept assistance. The neighbor weakly nodded, allowing them to help him without resistance. After ensuring the neighbor had some immediate care, water, blankets, and a comfortable position, John and Anna returned to his house. They needed to focus on securing her safety. David arrived soon after, carrying documents and a calm sense of authority. He had already researched options for Anna's protection and temporary shelter, and he laid out the plan clearly. "You'll stay here for now," David said. "This is safe, and we can use it as a temporary base. Meanwhile, I'll guide you through the steps to secure your status, protect your documents, and ensure your husband receives the care he needs without putting you at risk." Anna listened carefully, her hands trembling slightly with relief. She realized that this plan was realistic and practical, and it was the first time she had felt in control since arriving in the town. The fear that had dominated her life for days was slowly giving way to cautious hope. David went on to explain that they would need to act carefully. The local authorities might not immediately understand Anna's situation, and it was important to present the facts clearly and calmly. Anna would need to be prepared to explain her story, but John would be there to support her every step of the way. The day passed with careful planning and small victories. John helped Anna sort through her belongings, securing her passport and any documents she had. They also prepared a list of important contacts, including family members abroad, just in case communication became possible. Each small step gave Anna a sense of progress, and for the first time, she felt like she was actively shaping her own future. But the day was not without challenges. As they prepared to step outside for a short walk to gather supplies, a neighbor passed by and noticed Anna leaving John's house. The curious expression on the neighbor's face made John's heart race. He knew that attention could bring complications if questions arose before they were ready to explain the situation. "Stay calm," John whispered to Anna. "Just follow my lead." The neighbor approached, frowning slightly. "I didn't know you had visitors," the neighbor said. "Who is she?" John answered quickly but politely, keeping the explanation simple. "She's a friend from out of town. I'm helping her while she sorts some personal matters, that's all." The neighbor seemed satisfied for now but lingered for a moment, watching them carefully before moving on. John exhaled slowly once the neighbor was gone. It was a reminder that even small actions could attract attention, and that caution was necessary. Later, as they returned home, John noticed Anna's hands trembling slightly. She had been tense during the encounter, and he realized just how fragile her confidence still was. "You did well," he said reassuringly. "Sometimes, just handling a normal conversation in public can be stressful when your life has been upside down. You're doing better than you think." Anna nodded, taking a deep breath. "I never realized how small actions can feel dangerous," she admitted. "Even walking outside feels risky now." John placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's natural, you've been through a lot, but each step we take carefully builds your confidence. Soon, these things won't feel as frightening." As evening approached, David guided them through the next steps, including filing some paperwork to ensure Anna's temporary protection and documenting the neighbor's health needs. John watched as Anna listened, asking questions and showing understanding of each step. The small victories built a sense of momentum, turning a scary situation into a series of manageable tasks. By the end of the day, Anna felt tired but accomplished. She had survived the snow, navigated the moral and legal complexities with John and David, and taken her first steps toward regaining control over her life. For the first time in what felt like forever, she slept that night with a sense of safety and hope. John stayed up for a while, reviewing the plan and ensuring that everything was in place for the next day. He felt the tension of responsibility, but also a quiet satisfaction. Anna's safety was becoming real, and each careful step they took made the path forward a little clearer. Outside, the town was silent under a blanket of snow, but inside John's house, there was movement, warmth, and hope. Anna's trust in him, the guidance from David, and John's determination were creating a network of support that could protect her from danger. John realized that helping someone in need was rarely simple. It required careful thinking, patience, and a willingness to face moral dilemmas head-on. But he also knew that the choices he made today could change Anna's life forever. The weight of that responsibility was heavy, but it was balanced by the quiet joy of knowing he could make a difference. And as he watched the fire flicker in the quiet evening, John understood that courage often came not from grand gestures, but from careful, consistent actions, the choices that protected someone when they needed it most. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, Anna was safe and the plan was in motion. And sometimes that was enough to keep hope alive. The morning was quiet, the town still covered in a soft layer of snow from the previous days. Sunlight filtered weakly through the clouds, casting a gentle glow over the rooftops. Inside John's house, the atmosphere was calm but purposeful. After days of planning, preparation, and careful steps, it was finally time to put everything into action. Today could change Anna's life completely, and possibly even her husband's, though in a very different way. Anna had woken early, her energy slowly returning as she ate a small breakfast prepared by John. She had grown stronger each day, both physically and mentally. The fear that had once dominated her life had started to fade, replaced by cautious hope and a determination to face whatever came next. She knew the steps ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also realized she no longer had to face them alone. John checked in on her as she finished eating. "Are you ready for today?" he asked gently. Anna nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I think so," she said. "I'm nervous, but I trust you, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to be safe." John smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and reassurance. Trust was a fragile thing, but she had placed it in him, and he would honor it. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said. "Nothing will happen without you feeling safe." David arrived soon after, carrying paperwork and important documents they would need for the day. He had already contacted the local authorities discreetly, explaining Anna's situation and requesting that she be treated with care and protection. They had also arranged for a temporary shelter to keep her safe while the paperwork was processed. John could feel the weight of anticipation in the room. Today, months of fear, confusion, and abandonment could finally start to be resolved. The first step was to ensure that Anna's husband received proper care. Though he had abandoned her emotionally, he was still sick and vulnerable. John, Anna, and David approached the house carefully, making sure everything was in order. When they arrived, they found him weak but alert, lying in bed with blankets pulled up around him. "Hello," John said gently. "We're here to help you. You need care, and we'll make sure you get it safely." The man looked up weakly, his eyes filled with guilt and regret. I didn't mean," he murmured, but he didn't have the strength to continue. His body was frail, and his pride had been swallowed by illness. John nodded, understanding that he needed medical attention more than scolding. With David's guidance, they arranged for a local nurse to check on him regularly and ensure he had food, water, and medications. After ensuring the husband was stable, John turned his full attention to Anna. The next step was securing her safety and legal status. They went to the temporary shelter arranged by David, a small, warm, and safe place where Anna could stay without fear. For the first time since arriving in the town, she felt truly protected. The fear of being abandoned or forced back into danger began to lift, replaced by relief and hope. At the shelter, Anna met with a social worker and a legal advisor, both of whom were patient, kind, and professional. She explained her story, detailing the night in the snow, her husband's illness, and the abandonment she had suffered. John was with her every step of the way, offering quiet support and guidance, ensuring she felt empowered and safe. As the officials listened, they began to understand the complexity of her situation. Anna was vulnerable and alone, but she had a caring advocate in John. The process was slow and meticulous, but each step moved her closer to safety and a sense of control over her own life. By the afternoon, some initial paperwork had been completed, ensuring that she could remain in the shelter and start building a plan for her future. While Anna rested after the long morning, John and David discussed the next steps. They needed to make sure that Anna could contact her family safely, that her documents were secure, and that she had options for the future. John could see the relief on her face when he explained that soon she would be able to reach out to her loved ones, no longer isolated and powerless. Evening came, and the shelter staff helped Anna settle into her room. She looked around the small space, feeling a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. After days of fear, danger, and uncertainty, she finally had a place that felt safe, a place where she could sleep, eat, and begin to heal. She thought of John and David, realizing how much courage and kindness had been required to help her. As she sat quietly, Anna reflected on the events that had led her here. The night in the snow had been terrifying, but it had also been the turning point. Without John's quick thinking and moral courage, she might not have survived. His decision to act, even when he faced uncertainty and risk, had changed the course of her life. Later that night, John checked in on her one last time before leaving. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, you'll be able to contact your family, and the process to secure your documents will begin. You've made it through the worst, and now things will get better." Anna smiled, tears of relief and gratitude in her eyes. "I can't thank you enough," she whispered. "You saved my life." John shook his head gently. "You survived, that's your courage. I just helped when you needed it." The next day brought more progress. Anna was able to reach her family for the first time in weeks, sharing the story of her abandonment and the kindness she had received. Her loved ones were overjoyed to hear that she was safe and promised support and guidance for the future. The relief she felt was profound. After so long, she no longer felt alone. Meanwhile, John and David worked to ensure that the legal paperwork was processed correctly, protecting Anna's rights and ensuring her safety. They also coordinated with medical professionals to monitor her husband, making sure he received care without putting Anna at risk. Every detail was handled carefully, every decision guided by safety, compassion, and respect. By the end of the week, Anna's situation had transformed. She was no longer alone, no longer in danger, and no longer powerless. She had a safe place to stay, a plan for her future, and people she could trust. The fear that had once controlled her life was replaced by hope and a renewed sense of agency. John watched as Anna took small steps toward independence, walking confidently, speaking with officials, and planning for her future. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that his actions had contributed to this change. But more than that, he felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that kindness, courage, and determination could truly make a difference in someone's life. Then, the shocking twist came. Anna revealed that her husband had not only abandoned her emotionally, but had also planned to leave her completely, keeping her isolated and dependent. Without John's intervention, she might have been trapped indefinitely, powerless to escape the situation. The realization left a mixture of anger, disbelief, and relief. John had acted in time, and Anna's life had been spared from further harm. Anna's gratitude was evident, but more importantly, she had regained confidence. She was no longer a passive victim of circumstance. She had agency, protection, and a future that she could shape herself. And John, who had acted out of simple human kindness, saw the tangible impact of his courage. As the days passed, Anna settled into a routine, slowly regaining strength and confidence. She wrote letters to her family, explored options for work and education, and even began to think about long-term plans in the town. John and David continued to support her, ensuring that every step she took was safe and informed. One evening, Anna and John sat quietly in the living room of the shelter, the snow falling gently outside. Anna looked at John, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I will never forget what you did for me," she said softly. "You didn't just save me from the snow. You saved me from a life of fear and loneliness. You gave me hope." John smiled gently, feeling the warmth of those words. "You saved yourself too," he replied. "You had the courage to survive, to trust, and to keep going. I just helped you along the way." The fire crackled, casting soft shadows across the room, and for a moment the world felt simple and peaceful. Anna had survived, she was safe, and her future was full of possibilities. John had acted when it mattered most, proving that one person's courage and kindness could change the course of someone else's life entirely. Outside, the snow continued to fall lightly, covering the town in white, but inside there was warmth, safety, and hope. Anna's life had been transformed, and John knew that the smallest acts of compassion, the decisions made in moments of uncertainty, could create ripples that lasted far beyond a single day. And as John watched Anna settle in for the night, he realized that sometimes the greatest courage comes not from facing danger directly, but from doing the right thing when no one else will. Anna's trust, resilience, and the careful planning of a few good people had created a miracle out of a frightening and desperate situation. For Anna, the future was bright. For John, the satisfaction of knowing he had acted when it mattered most was a reward that no words could capture. And together, they had turned a terrifying night in the snow into a story of courage, hope, and human kindness, a story that would never be forgotten.